Now, researcher Institute for Security Studies, Manda Lucy, still joining us here in studio. Thank you for staying with us this afternoon.
It's a pleasure.
Now, India is South Africa's eighth most important trading partner, with China as its most significant. This so-called South-South cooperation is seen as different from North-South cooperation. Could you elaborate on what this means for South Africa?
Absolutely. Well, as I've mentioned, India and South Africa view each other as natural development partners, but as southern partners, this means that they emphasize certain principles, such as that of solidarity. As has been mentioned today, India and South Africa both have this shared history of decolonization, of ancient trade ties, of large Indian diaspora in South Africa. And so really both countries emphasize solidarity, mutual respect, sovereignty, and these kinds of issues in all their engagements.
Now, India seems to have a policy which differs from others, including China, in that it provides assistance to its trading and aimed at creating sustainable relationships. Could you elaborate on that?
Yes, so as I've mentioned, India places a large emphasis on education and skills development. So, for example, India has its Indian Technical and Economic Program, and there's a specific sub-program which deals with Africa. Within this, there's really a large emphasis on education and skills. So, for example, last year at the India-Africa Foreign Summit, an additional 50,000 scholarship slots over the next 5 years were promised to African students. And the idea behind this really is that these kind of initiatives will generate goodwill for South Africans and Africans at a later stage, and probably enhance business ties later down the line.
Now, the North-South cooperation largely has its origins in colonialism.
Yes.
Does this account for the differences in emphasis?
Yes. I mean, I've already mentioned the aspects of solidarity, but I think another important aspect to mention is that of the demand-driven nature of this kind of cooperation. So, as I mentioned with the scholarship slots, India will roughly determine the number of allocations, and then countries will then approach their respective embassies to determine their actual country priority needs. And this means that rather than going with some kind of hidden agenda, any kind of cooperation is really determined by countries' own individual needs.
And India is developing an economy with a rapid growth rate, and are there lessons to be learned from their development that South Africa can soak in?
Yes, I think the way that India really makes use of its multiple stakeholder partnerships, as I mentioned, its strong business structures, its universities, and so on and so forth. And I think this is really a way of maximizing its development cooperation, and certainly there are lessons to be learned there.
And the assistance given is often practical and demand-driven. Can you elaborate on their scholarships and other examples of this kind of assistance?
Yeah, I mean, I think the idea behind this is that countries that come from similar developmental backgrounds are better placed to share these kinds of experience because they have more simplified and relevant methodologies. So, for example, I mean, India has been active in training illiterate women in India, and this is one experience that they've been exporting abroad.
Wow, that is quite fascinating. And important agreements are likely to emerge today. What is necessary to make this more than just a workshop?
Well, as you know, South Africa and India have established a joint ministerial commission, and last year in July, when they last met, they decided that there's a need to make this more results-based. So now India and South Africa are operating under a 5-year strategic framework, and it will really require the working groups to begin to iron out how they're going to get definitive results. But I think just one additional area to mention is that South Africa and India have been discussing preferential trade agreements, and this will be something that will have to be followed up.
Oh, wow. Thank you very much. That was Manda Lucy speaking with us in studio on touching on the issues there involving South Africa and India, and also just highlighting a couple of economic developments between South Africa and India, which we can also absorb and learn, and vice versa. Now, speaking to ANN7 senior journalist from New Delhi, Shakur Gupta says India is not worried about South Africa's friendship with China.
it will be seen as a big leg up in the relationship. Also because Mr. Modi has made this big ticket item in terms of his own performance scorecard. I think this is a box he really wants to check. And he will go to every country which has doubts. And he knows that the Chinese may not listen to him because Chinese have other motivations. I won't say compulsions, but other motivations, particularly in the region. I think it's going to earn India's gratitude on a permanent basis. And I do hope that, it's my editorial view also, I do hope that a country like South Africa, which has never had anything but friendship with India or exchanged goodwill with India, it should review its position.